Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a program that talks about breeding of terrorism and its impact on South Asian nations. Let's begin with the headlines first. Major terror attack averted in Jammu and Kashmir on Pulwama anniversary. Bangladesh court sentences 5 to death for killing US blogger Avijit Roy. And NATO holds troop withdrawal deadline of May 1 to take call after reviewing situation in Afghanistan. Let's begin with India's Jammu and Kashmir, where a major terror plot was thwarted by the security forces. As India was grieving martyred brave hearts on the second anniversary of Pulwama attack, the Jammu and Kashmir police successfully managed to prevent a major terror strike in the Union territory. A report.
14 February 2019, a truck full of explosives plowed into a bus, killing at least 40 soldiers of the Central Reserve Police Force in Pulwama. As when India was observing the second anniversary of that cowardly terror attack, Pak-backed terrorists were planning a similar strike. The sinister plot was successfully foiled by the alert Jammu and Kashmir police as the terrorists were planning an IED explosion near the crowded bus stand area in Jammu. The arrested nursing student in the case, Sohail Bashir, was assigned this task by his Pakistan-based handler affiliated with Al-Badr terror outfit. In another successful operation, police seized 6 pistols along with a large quantity of ammunition and 15 minor IEDs in the Samba district. Moreover, an encounter between security forces and terrorists also broke out in Budgam, which resulted in the killing of 3 terrorists.
It's a big IED. It would have created havoc wherever it was to be put. The targets on their radar were bus stand, jewelry market, Lakdata Bazaar, railway station and Raghunath temple. I'm happy to report that our Jammu police was very alert and they've been able to lay their hands on IED before it could be used. It's a big success. Other 2 terror outfits, Jaish-e-Mohammed front Lashkar-e Mustafa and Lashkar-e Tauba front TRF, both the commanders have been arrested from Wadi Brahmana region.
The Al-Badr terrorist outfit was proscribed by the Government of India in the year 2002. Headquartered at Mansehra in Pakistan, the outfit has claimed responsibility for several terrorist attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Last year, only it came to light that this long-defunct terror group was revived again by Pakistan to disrupt peace in the Union territory. In the past, the outfit has launched attacks targeting Indian military installations and prominent government officials. Closely linked with Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence or ISI, Al-Badr is one of several Pak-backed jihadi groups involved in disrupting communal harmony in Jammu and Kashmir.
They want that this Jammu area, which has been peaceful even during the Khalistan movement times, should now come into turmoil, so that this entire area, people over here are, especially the ones who are not in tune with the ideology of the Wahhabism Islam, should be moved out from here, from the Jammu and Kashmir, so that this entire area becomes an Islamic caliphate. This is what Pakistan is trying, but this will not be succeeded because the people, the Indian government and the security forces are all very, very alert to all this thing, and such people who try to set up bases over here in Jammu will be nabbed and prosecuted as per law.
Pakistan has always sought with varying degrees of intensity to destabilize India, wreck its unity and challenge its integrity. This approach is unlikely to change. Now terrorist groups backed by ISI and Pakistani army have adopted a new modus operandi to fuel terror strikes in the peaceful region of Jammu and Kashmir. But Indian security forces are always vigilant, alert and capable of giving a befitting reply. After the Pulwama incident, Indian security forces have taken a plethora of strategically key initiatives aimed at boosting its counter-terrorism strategy.
40 से ज़्यादा CRPF के जवान शहीद हुए। ये एक बहुत दुखद दिन था। पर उसके बाद जो भारत में जागरूकता आई, भारत ने रियलाइज़ किया, भारत की जो डिसीजन मेकिंग बॉडी ने जो पॉलिटिकल बॉडी ने रियलाइज़ किया कि अब हमको बदलाव लाना पड़ेगा, और बदलाव आया सोचने की शक्ति में, प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के अप्रोच में, और जिस तरीके से उसके बाद बालाकोट का अंजाम दिया। बालाकोट इसीलिए हुआ था कि उनको एक सबक सिखाना था।
It seems that Pakistan has not learnt much. Otherwise, terrorists backed by Pakistan would not have fired upon a police party in Bhagat Barzulla area of Srinagar, leaving 2 cops dead. Islamabad should understand that any move to repeat Pulwama or any attempt to challenge India's integrity will be disastrous for it. Pakistan needs to make a hard choice now: find peace with India or blunder into an escalatory cycle. Low-cost options are over.
Moving on to Bangladesh. Avijit Roy, a US citizen of Bangladeshi origin, was hacked to death by some Islamic hardliners in 2015 in the Bangladeshi capital Dhaka. A court in Bangladesh has now sentenced 5 members of a terror group to death, 6 years after the horrific incident that left the nation in fear and shock. The country has been witnessing a growing influence of Islamic extremism among its citizens, leading to the brutal killings of several bloggers, rights activists and liberal intellectuals.
After 6 years of Avijit Roy's murder, a special anti-terrorism court sentenced to death 5 terrorists, including a fugitive army major Saeed Ziaul Haq of Ansar al-Islam, an Islamist organization linked with the terror group Al-Qaeda. The verdict came nearly a week after a court sentenced to death 8 Islamic militants, including sect Major Haq, for killing Roy's publisher Faisal Arifin Dibon. A Bangladeshi-American engineer, activist, writer and blogger, Avijit Roy was ruthlessly killed with machetes by jihadi militants when he was returning from a book fair at the Dhaka University on February 26, 2015. His wife Rafida Ahmad had also suffered severe injuries but somehow survived. Known for writing against Islamic fundamentalism, promoting science, rationalism, free thinking and human rights, Roy had to lay down his life for the freedom of expression. Over the past decade, Bangladesh has been reeling under a spate of Islamist violence, with liberal voices being brutally suppressed who dare to defend a secular vision of society. There have been growing atmosphere of intolerance in the country. Even the Sheikh Hasina government have been accused of being authoritarian and violating the freedom of the press. Consequently, Bangladesh was ranked 151 out of 180 countries in World Press Freedom Index 2020 by Reporters Without Borders. In fact, the country slipped down 1 notch in the index from 2019. Moreover, the killings, sometimes claimed by Al-Qaeda and sometimes by ISIS affiliates, illustrate a culture of violence that Dhaka has been unable to rein in. This thread of violence and intolerance goes back to the 1993 fatwa against author Taslima Nasreen following the release of her book Lacha. She had to leave Bangladesh after she received death threats from the hardline Islamists in the mid-1990s.
Freedom of speech, this is probably one of the perils of all states, especially in the Indian subcontinent. And we have to bear in mind Bangladesh is a very young and emerging economy and a state, marking the 50th Independence Day on 26th of March 2021. So I'm sure with the progression of time, the liberties and the security to freedom of speech will be enshrined, and I'm sure that the present government led by Prime Minister Hasina will definitely empower the freedoms which her father Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman even paid the ultimate price of sacrificing his life to protect the integrity of the country which he founded.
The global terror groups are taking advantage of increasing intolerance in the country. The horrific and dastardly attack on innocent civilians at Holy Artisan Bakery in a posh section of Dhaka, which took the life of 22 persons, mainly foreigners, was yet another instance of the rise in terrorism in the country. The attack was claimed by Jamaat-ul Mujahideen Bangladesh, which operates under the umbrella of global terrorist organization Islamic State. According to authorities in Bangladesh, Islamic State and Al-Qaeda are using a network of recruiters to hire new recruits as well as social media platforms like Facebook and Telegram to spread their doctrine among youth and establish undercover networks. Several intelligence reports also reveal about the ongoing recruitment efforts among the Bangladeshi diaspora communities living in Britain. Al-Qaeda has flushed in a sea of online content to instigate and influence people to execute lone wolf attacks in the broader area of global jihad.
With regards to breeding grounds and recruitment of fundamentalism is a plague which is rampant, especially in the European world, and a lot more has to be done from the internal, communities and the representatives of various sections of society, especially in Britain, to make sure that these grounds of terrorism recruitment and who spread hate and intolerance are curbed and controlled. So it has to be a joint effort by both the community and the state.
Besides Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, the Rohingya crisis also remains a potent threat to Bangladesh's security and stability. Several media and intelligence reports reveal that Pakistan's military intelligence and spy agency, the ISI, have close connections to Jamaat-ul Mujahideen and small terror groups operating at Bangladesh-Myanmar border. The reports suggest that these agencies are involved in radicalizing and providing terror training to Rohingya refugees based in Bangladesh to destabilize neighboring Afghanistan and India. India has made efforts domestically and along with Bangladesh to counter the threat posed by Pakistan-backed terror groups. However, with rise in religious fanaticism and terrorists adopting new technologies and tactics, the threat of terrorism will continue to pose a big challenge to peace and security of Bangladesh and entire South Asia.
Moving on, the fate of the US-Taliban deal is still hanging in the balance while the war-torn nation is witnessing a rapid surge in bloodshed. Recently, NATO Secretary General urged the Afghan government and the Taliban to step up the pace of peace talks amid doubts over whether the military alliance will pull thousands of troops out of the country by the May deadline. A report.
After 20 years of military engagement and billions of dollars spent, NATO and the United States are still grappling with the same challenge, that is how to withdraw troops from Afghanistan without abandoning the country to even more mayhem. Several reports have suggested that since the United States signed a troop withdrawal deal with the Taliban last year that called for a reduction in violence by all sides, attacks by the insurgent group have escalated. Highlighting the constant spike in the violence by the Taliban, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg refused to commit to a deadline to withdraw forces from Afghanistan by May 1, as required by last year's agreement between the United States and the Taliban. He said that the alliance is seeking a lasting and sustainable political agreement in Afghanistan.
Defense ministers had a thorough discussion on the situation in Afghanistan. We are faced with many dilemmas, and there are no easy options. At this stage, we have made no final decision on the future of our presence. But as the 1st of May deadline is approaching, NATO allies will continue to closely consult and coordinate in the coming weeks.
There has been a surge in violence, with the Taliban continuing to carry out attacks targeting government leaders, security forces and civilians. The findings of Kabul-based media organization Tolo News show that up to 340 were either killed or wounded in security incidents in Afghanistan since the start of February 2021 as a result of magnetic IEDs, roadside bombs, and targeted killings. This week too, 2 lecturers at Kabul University were killed when a bomb attached to the car they were traveling in went off. Meanwhile, a report by the UN monitoring team has also revealed that the Taliban has kept up a close relationship with Al-Qaeda despite having pledged to stop cooperating with the group. These deep ties between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are a serious and significant factor that could break the already fragile peace agreement apart.
So what we see is that Taliban is responsible for violence. We see that there is still a need for Taliban to do more when it comes to deliver on their commitments, including the commitment to break ties, to not provide any support for terrorist organizations that can plan, organize attacks against us. So Taliban needs to reduce violence, to negotiate in good faith, and to make sure that they break all ties with international terrorists, not provide them any support.
The Taliban's brazen offensive has put the Biden administration into a dangerous political bind. If the United States honors the withdrawal date, there are apprehensions that the Taliban could overwhelm what's left of the Afghan security forces and take control of major cities. However, if Washington and NATO don't leave Afghanistan on the preset date, the Taliban have made it clear that the world will face a dangerous war, a war that never happened in the past 20 years.
Let's move to another big story which demonstrates the threats emerging from radical Islamist organizations in India. In a major crackdown, the security forces in northern state of Uttar Pradesh arrested 2 members of controversial Popular Front of India who were planning to carry out bombings in different parts of the country. With this arrest, terror links of extreme Islamic outfits have once again been established. We take a look.
Basant Panchami marks the preparation of the arrival of spring. It is celebrated across India with much fervour and joy. This year, the occasion could have turned traumatic as extremist Islamic organization Popular Front of India had plans to trigger blast across Uttar Pradesh. 2 agents of this controversial radical organization were arrested by Uttar Pradesh Special Task Force with high-quality explosives, detonators and weapons. The nabbed terrorists Asad Badruddin and Firoz Khan were recruiting members in different states to carry out the attacks. Apart from planning to strike sensitive places in the state, the duo wanted to target prominent office bearers of Hindu organizations.
जो 2 व्यक्ति पकड़े गए हैं ये पीएफआई के हायरार्की में काफ़ी ऊपर के लेवल पर हैं और इन लोगों ने इनके पास से कुछ ऐसे डॉक्यूमेंट्स मिले हैं और ऐसे एविडेंसेस मिले हैं जिसको हम कोर्ट में प्रोड्यूस करेंगे. हाई एक्सप्लोसिव डिवाइस मिला है, इनके पास से डेटोनेटर मिला है, इनके पास से एक पिस्टल मिली है, रेलवे टिकट्स मिली हैं जो कि ये दर्शाती हैं कि ये मूव कर रहे थे और जो हमारे पास सूचना थी वो सही थी और अभी तक के हिसाब से ये कुछ महत्वपूर्ण व्यक्तियों को टारगेट कर रहे थे और इसमें जिससे कि कारण बहुत वैमनस्यता फैल सकती थी समाज में.
It is not the first time PFI is involved in creating terror. The organization's name has cropped up in almost all sensitive cases as the conspirator and event financer. From Kerala's professor hand-chopping case to raising funds to organize terrorist training camps, PFI's history itself is evidence of its association with terror. It is facing multiple criminal and terror charges by different agencies in the country. These charges include murder and kidnapping, inciting violence and disturbing communal harmony, connections with various Islamist terrorist groups, running hate campaigns and money laundering, using and making lethal weapons, masterminding blasts across the country, forced conversions. An alarming fact is that PFI is not alone. Islamic radical outfits with various different names across the country always try to hide behind the cover of human rights groups. These organizations claim to be part of institutions advocating social change and standing up for the underprivileged section of the society. This makes it difficult for law enforcement agencies to take strict action against them.
The growth of these radical groups is going to pose a very important challenge to the national security managers. It is very important for our information and intelligence networks to ensure that they get a dominant presence in these communication media which is being used by the radical groups. That is one option which has to be exercised in the present times.
According to the Indian law enforcement agencies, sometimes these mushrooming radical outfits get foreign funds from Hawala channels. Financing of the organizations is also achieved through their membership schemes. These donations mostly come in the name of social welfare. However, the money does not reach the actual organizations. Instead, experts claim it is used for unethical activities.
That the radical groups and extremist groups keep changing the media they use, they keep changing the channels they use. So it's always a race to match them in these various domains. And that is where I think the challenge lies. So I would say that though at present our agencies are doing quite a lot, but they have to remain on top of these media environment which is constantly evolving and which has been exploited by the radical groups in a very, very large way.
Radical Islamic outfits like PFI act as a cross-linking platforms and as connecting bridges between the terrorist organizations. With the role of such organizations becoming conspicuous in fomenting trouble in the country, the government has decided to take strict actions against them and their sister organizations. Strong presence of such hate-mongering radical groups in different parts of the country is a threat to national security.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@nin.com. This is Shreya Savijay signing off on the behalf of entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.